What's the name of that movie that's out right now? Yeah, that's it. Let me just recommend something. Folks, if you don't understand and realize the assault on religious freedoms that are going on, particularly out of the Obama administration today, you better wake up and start smelling the roses, because it is serious. And I'll tell you, there's a movie out right now called For Greater Glory. Now, it's R rating because of the violence. There's no illicit sex in it. There's no curse words, if you can imagine that. But in 1920, due to a change in the Constitution in Mexico in 1917, in 1920, the then duly elected president of Mexico basically declared war on the Catholic Church. And after some period of time of praying and about this issue and trying to get it resolved, the Catholic Church realized they were going to have to stand up to this. And so there ensued a war. And it's a very interesting movie. We went to see it a week ago Saturday. I highly recommend that you go see it, because there's many parallels that happened then. It's all based on a true story. Many parallels that happened then that have happened throughout time and history and are happening in this country today. So I'm thrilled to see this movie, because we have got to wake the church up in this nation to the threats and the risk of your ability to practice your religion the way you choose to do so without government rising up and trampling all over somebody. If you've ever seen The Truth Project, number 9 of The Truth Project is really good about teaching sphere sovereignty. And you have these certain spheres. God has created government, He created the family, and He also created the church. And they're all supposed to relate to one another properly. But when one of them fails to do its job, society hurts. When in another case, one of them rises up and tramples over the other one or two, society hurts. Which is the one that's most likely to rise up and trample on somebody? Government. Okay, so I urge you to go see that movie. Let's introduce our lawmakers that are here with us today. We have at this first table State Senator Anthony Sykes. Also, we have with us today former State Senator Randy Brogdon. You may not recognize him as he's beginning to look more and more like I do all the time. At this next table back here, we have State Representative Paul Wesselhoff. Paul. Going around the table, I'm sorry, let me go to Sally first. We have State Representative Sally Kern. Then right next to Sally, on my left of Sally, is State Representative Steve Vaughn from Ponca City. Thank you for coming down. I'm trying to think, is there anyone else here? It's a State Representative. Okay. I have one more thing I need to make an announcement on here. Jerome Montgomery has wanted me to make this announcement about an Americanist education meeting this coming Saturday. And it's going to be at Harley's Cafe, and I believe that's in Choctaw if I'm not mistaken. Harley's Cafe. It's at Henny Road and Northeast 23rd Street. And that will be, you can come and eat at 8 o'clock in the morning. The actual meeting will be from 9:30 to 11:30. For those of you that don't know, Harley's Cafe actually has a separate room. They call it their Americanist room. And they've got a TV, and they show DVDs in it, and they really promote conservative, true Americanist ideals. So if you'd like to go and get some of that good information, please do so. A couple other things. If you've not joined OCPAC yet, we have our membership forms over here and a sign-up sheet for our email list if you're not getting that directly. I want to remind everybody that we're going to have a special meeting this Saturday right here at the restaurant, 12 noon. And the reason for that, we're rushing and we're doing this as quickly as we can to get the conservative index completed so that Ron and Steve can put it on their website and people can go and see how the lawmakers scored this particular year. So that'll be 12 noon.
Before the primary.
Before the primary, yes. How many of you think that you might be here this Saturday? Can I see a show of hands? Keep them up here. Okay, maybe a dozen or so out of this group. Who knows how many will come otherwise. All right, one of the things I want to tell you what we're going to be doing today. If you've not picked your list up, please come up here at the table and get your list. These are the bills we're considering. There's 22 of them, I believe. And today what we're doing is considering not whether you like the bill or not. That's not the point. That'll be considered this coming Saturday. This is a consideration of whether these bills that have been submitted are clearly a vote that shows whether it is a conservative or liberal vote and which way conservative and liberal is. The last one on the list, I predict, will be quite a heated debate as to which way conservative is in this. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn the program over. Steve, do you want it here? Steve Byas is one of the two owners, along with Ron McWhirter of the Oklahoma Constitution newspaper. I think Steve is the is the managing editor. Steve is the production editor. Ron, here. Please welcome these guys here.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all you guys for working on this conservative index for us year after year. I remember in the early years, Ron and Clyde Rollins and I would be on Ron's living room floor with the bills spread out all over the floor and things like that. Things got a little bit more high-tech now, but this is a good help. Charlie said some of the things that I wanted to say about what the purpose is today is just to, if there's something glaring about one of these bills, the reason we should use it or should not use it, the actual vote's not today, it's Saturday. But here's what I want you to kind of look through this prism, that there's 5 areas that we're kind of looking at as consider it as liberal or conservative. We look at limited government, individual liberty, free enterprise, and constitutional principles and traditional standards. So, for example, something might be okay, but it violates the Constitution. Well, then it's not conservative then. So you have to have rules to operate in society. You know, you couldn't have a very good basketball game if the rules weren't set before the game got started. And so that's why constitutionalism is very important, to follow the Constitution. Even if you don't agree with the way the Constitution specifically handles that, there's a method to change it. You don't change it by a simple law. Okay, does everybody kind of know what I'm saying about on the importance of Constitution? And the others, of course, are limited government. As James Madison said, we have to have government because men are not angels. But we also have to limit government because men are not angels. You have to have both of them. So kind of keep those certain areas in your mind as you think of this. Does this fit one of those categories of advancing the cause of limited government, or does it advance individual liberty or protect the Constitution and free enterprise? Free enterprise is very important. I hear a lot of candidates, a lot of office holders say, well, I'm pro-business. Well, then I always follow up with the question, does that mean you're for free enterprise? And sometimes I get kind of a blank look because that's not the same thing. Sometimes pro-business is code words for getting the government to give them a competitive advantage over their competitors. And so try to narrow people down when they say that. If they say they're for pro-business, say, are you for the free enterprise system? Do you believe in price controls? It is shocking to me how many people believe in price controls, and I could get off on that. But Ron is going to go over these bills with you, and here he is. He is the general manager of the Oklahoma Constitution.
Okay, we've got 22 bills here. Now, if we're going to get out here like in an hour or so, if we we get them covered while most of the people are here, that would only be 2 or 3 minutes per bill. And there's some that we definitely want to discuss while the full group is here. And so there's 3 of them in particular that we want to get covered, and then we'll try to get through all the rest of them if we can. But on number 14 on your 3rd page, House Joint Resolution 1119, Corporation Commission fee increases. And this resolution allows the Oklahoma Corporation Commission to raise fees. According to officials at the Commission, the fee increases are needed to help offset rising costs at the Commission. It is estimated the increased fees will generate $370,000 per year. It is claimed that that those affected by the fee increases are agreeable to the change. Now, in general, you would think, opposition to fee increases, would be a thing we want to have on here. But fee increases can be justified, and we really don't know what percentage. Are they doubling fees, and on what things? And perhaps some of the legislators can maybe know more of the details on that. So anybody want to do some discussion about this? Senator Sykes.
I just wanted to, it's not in here, but this initially failed in the Senate and then was reconsidered and passed with 1 vote. So I thought that might be important to add, that initially went down, they reconsidered it and brought it back up.
Do you know the details about it? What the fee increases are to be used for? How much they are?
There were a variety of oil and gas service fees increases, and of course it was lobbied as they're agreeable to this and want this. I guess when the entity that regulates you says, "Hey, we're going to do this," you kind of hedge your bets sometimes. But if that's the case, anything from inspections and from what I'm just going off memory here, but it was just a laundry list of fee increases for services for inspections and things like that.
And is the money actually going to be used for those things?
Allegedly. we have an Attorney General's office that's supposed to ensure it does.
Okay.
And the state auditor and inspector as well.
So it would be tied directly to, like it does on some kind of inspection fee, that it would just go for that, it wouldn't go in general for the Corporation Commission?
Want my same answer, allegedly, yes.
Yeah. So you would concur that a no vote is conservative on
Yes.
this? Okay. Back there. Bob.
Do the existing fees for this purpose stay within it for this purpose? Or do any of them that currently get siphoned off to the general fund? Anybody know?
I think that all the fees do stay with the Corporation Commission. It's just increasing them supposedly to cover their increased costs of doing those things.
Do they currently get paid or charge fees based on the amount of energy that's produced? Is it going up anyway because we're extracting more out of the ground?
I have no idea, but I would guess that these are probably fixed fees for whatever the purpose of it is. And it's just allowing them to increase it. If it was a $100 fee, maybe it's increasing to $150 or something. And again, we don't know what percentage it's increasing. It's just allowing them to increase fees. Yes.
It sounds like there's too many questions on this, because if it is a valid fee and it is being treated like a fee, then I don't think we should use it in the index. And a no vote isn't necessarily conservative or liberal, it just is what it is. If they need more money, they need more money.
Yeah, that's exactly our concern, because it could be a valid, it could be a valid.
My knee-jerk reaction is $370,000 is nothing. Find it from somewhere else where you have an invalid or improper function of government. But if we don't know the answers to these questions and it is functioning like a fee, let's not use it.
Yeah.
Again, this is not about whether you use it or not.
Yeah,
it's about whether it's really reflecting.
But that's a good point.
But it is.
We don't want to end up with it being on there and come back, well, this is a really valid thing, and they're just being opposed to it just because it's a fee increase.
Well, I'm curious, Senator Sykes, do you see this as a valid bill to have on the index?
Do you see it as a valid bill?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a fee increase, tax increase. A tax by another name would smell as bad.
A tax increase without a vote of the people?
Representative Wesselaw.
The less that we appropriate we hold the line on appropriation, you're going to see a lot of increases in fees, and this is just one example of it. That's a general principle.
Yeah. But if it's truly a fee, I may not have a problem with it. But if they're increasing that and then taking that money away from its intended purpose for somewhere else, it's no longer a fee, it's a tax. And that's a big difference.
Roger.
Ron, and one other thing, it's very doubtful that some of this money does not go into the general revenue. I mean, almost every fee increase, 23rd and Lincoln gets their fair share before it actually goes for what the fee increase was intended for.
Yeah.
Said. An argument can be made that whatever funds that would come from the general fund that would be appropriated to the Corporation Commission are reduced by the ability of the Corporation Commission to increase its fees. There was over $300 million more this go around that wasn't given back to us as taxpayers, and yet they're coming to us again for a backdoor approach, or not so much backdoor approach, but an approach to generate more revenue from the state. So the question is the state being deprived of enough revenue? That's right. If it is being deprived, then support this.
Nobody like Jim Marshall. Last one right there.
Do we know if in fact that the Corporation Commission's appropriations were reduced by the $370,000 amount to match for this? Was this passed as part of their agency's budget agreement?
From what I read, it sounded to me like the $370,000. They calculated that, and that was going to be, part of their operational, cost, and then. And I had the impression it was staying directly in the commission, not going to the general fund. But I don't know for certain.
How many of you think a no vote is conservative vote? How many of you think a no vote is conservative vote? Okay. How many of you think a yes vote is conservative vote? Okay.
How many think we maybe shouldn't put this on or be considering this? Okay.
Move on.
All right. Okay.
We're dealing with the most difficult first.
Okay, on the back page, number 21, nonpartisan sheriff elections.
Oh my God.
Senate Bill 327 would allow the nonpartisan election of county sheriffs. The county sheriff serves as the foremost enforcement official in the county. Supporters of the bill say the county sheriff should not be a partisan office. Opponents say the partisan affiliation provides guidance to the voters as to their core ideology. Now, it's interesting that two Republicans are authors of the bill. But I would say that it's mostly Democrats that were supporting this because it's now having a Republican by your name running for sheriff is a help. And so they'd rather see it, go back the other way. And I don't know why some of the Republicans were supporting it.
I can tell you why on that. Because I talked to the House author of it. And the reason is, for years when we were in a minority, we speculated that this would help the Republican Party to go nonpartisan. And so it's been a part of our platform for years. And it's not bad to run a bill according to your platform. The problem is the platform needs to be changed, in my estimation, and I think that this was taken out of it. I'm not for sure. But anyway, I can't fault the guy for running it to stand up for something we put in our platform. But the reality of it is, if you're ever running in a nonpartisan race, the question you will get asked the most on the doorstep is, what political party are you? How are you registered? Because that means something to some voters. And that's why I think it's reflecting.
And so kind of the question is this more of a Republican versus Democrat bill, or is it really conservative versus liberal? Anybody got comments about it?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't been out there for 2 years, but I can tell you for the last 3 or 4 that I was out there, there was one main person pushing this bill. His name is John Wetzel.
That's right.
And he's done everything he could to get it passed. So if you're for John Wetzel, then okay, this is a,
And of course, he's the Democrat sheriff for Oklahoma County.
Yeah, with the big old war chest.
And somebody, said that he has just changed to Republican, even though he's running as the Democrat candidate.
I heard
And I
him
guess that
cry.
would be so that he could say he's Republican.
Yeah, you can't. You can't change Republican.
Yeah, it's very clear to me it's a political type question, not a constitutional type question.
So you would say it shouldn't be considered?
Right.
Any other comments?
Well, politics plays a part of it.
Sure does.
Representative Vaughn.
When this bill came, I called my sheriff in the Newkirk area, and number one is yes, he's proud to be Republican. But he said, you know what? No matter what, Steve, at least they know my ideology, they know what I believe, and when it comes down to it, they're going to know where I stand. Okay? And because of the answer, I voted with this to be able to say, yeah, it should stay out of people. People should know that there's an arm behind them, because if they don't know the individuals at all, they can at least look at the ideology and say, this is probably the person and the thought process and ideals that he'll have at the same time. That's why I see that.
Yeah. You know, Republicans and Democrats do have a real difference, the philosophical difference between the parties on crime and punishment. And that's why I think it's real important here.
Here.
Okay, the other one that we definitely wanted to discuss is the last one, number 22. This is to abolish the EDGE fund, which is the Economic Development Generating Excellence. Of course, anytime there's some government program for economic development, that certainly raises some flags on things. And so the history of the EDGE fund is that this is something that developed in 2007, supported by Governor Henry in the legislature. They created an endowment fund with $150 million, and the proceeds, and eventually they had hoped to keep increasing this endowment until it was $1 billion, and the earnings from the fund would be go to invest in high technology companies. And so this bill abolishes the fund, abolishes the board and puts the state treasurer in charge of basically liquidating the fund. About the earnings, which are approximately $7 million, would go to the Quick Action Closing Fund, which is another economic development type thing. And the biggest part, the principal, would go to the state regent's endowment trust fund, which the state's $280 million behind in matching. They've made a commitment to match donations to the endowment fund. So this would take, this is a method of meeting part of that obligation. So, Representative Westlaw.
Ron, this is the one I feel the strongest about. I don't need the microphone. Let me tell you, this bill came out 30 minutes before the end of session. What? This bill came out 30 minutes before sine die. This bill was whipped by the Republican caucus. I'm one of the whips. We Republicans told the Speaker, we don't want to hear this bill. We voted no, not to even hear the bill. Republicans said to the Republican Speaker, we don't want to hear this bill. He brought it out 30 minutes before sine die because he knew he had enough Democrats to pass it. Had we not passed this stupid bill, this $167 million, we could take that money and do some capital repairs next year. We could hire some more correctional officers that we need. We could repair the medical examiner's office. All of those are core functions of government, and they are well needed. That's what we could have done with that money. But we gave that money to higher ed, as if they needed it. That's a travesty that he brought that bill out 30 minutes before sine die. And let me tell you what's going to happen next year. We strong Republicans killed the bonds this year. You know what? Next year, they're going to be asking for more bonds to repair the Capitol, do the ME's office, and correctional officers. And they may even try to get some money from the rainy day fund to do those things. They want to put our state in debt. We could have taken that $167 million and paid for those infrastructure needs. But we blew that money 30 minutes before sine die. And when the caucus tells Republicans, we don't want to hear the bill, and the Speaker hears it anyway, that's disloyalty. He was a disloyal Speaker in that regard.
We know how Representative Wesselhoff feels about this.
Can I take
other bill? Well, just a second. Now, we had conservative legislators on both sides of this thing, and for those like Representative Wesselhoff, who voted against it, the question has to be, so then does that mean you support the hedge fund?
It does not mean that.
So if you don't abolish
There's a
it,
vote on
are
the
you
hedge
supporting
fund.
it?
None of our motivation, we don't care about that fund.
There's a
Mike
vote
Lewis
on
could
the
tell you
hedge
that fund is the stupidest fund in the world. But we needed that money for capital repairs.
But there's no guarantee it would go for capital repairs.
But now we don't have
Explain it
any,
if you let me.
we don't have any.
Let Mike go.
Help me out.
Representative Reynolds.
Let Mike go, then I'm gonna take the other side in a minute.
There is no other side. You can't call yourself a conservative and be for that.
We'll see.
It is impossible to call yourself a conservative and be for that bill. The money was already taken from the Edge Fund. So we could have sent it anywhere we want, and that bill sent it where they wanted, to higher ed. So you cannot call yourself a conservative and spend that money on higher ed. Now, I had distributed documents on the floor of the House all week long showing that the Edge Fund had funded people like Frank DeAngelis. He's a researcher at the OU Health Science Center. He discovers something on state taxpayer dollars, and then he gets to transfer the technology to outside companies. One of the companies he transferred to has participated in 2 other tax credit programs. The Edge Fund, everybody agrees, was a horrible fund. They only agreed the last week of session, not the last 6 years when I've been claiming it was a horrible fund. The last week of session. Paul Risher said it created over 1,000 jobs. I didn't give me the names of the companies. I submitted it to the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission. They could identify 13 jobs from the companies that they gave me. That's where they created jobs. So it was a lie. And anybody that thinks it's a good idea to transfer from higher ed to higher ed is no conservative, has no understanding of what was going on in that bill. They're giving people a pass. Simply put. They transferred it to the endowed chair program. Try to find out who an endowed chair is. And we were told, we heard a statement here, with all due respect, we have no obligation to fund the endowed chairs. Zero.
That's right.
Just because some legislature 8, 10, 20 years ago said, hey, this is a good program, we're going to make somebody in the future do it. We have no obligation, and no one can claim to be a conservative and say, we have to meet that obligation. So it was a horrible, horrible program, and I hope I'll get a rebuttal after someone gets a rebuttal on me.
Well, I would suggest, I don't disagree with a thing that Representative Reynolds said about the bad program. It was a very bad program. I would suggest to you everything he just told you is irrelevant to this, with the exception of one thing. I'd like to ask you a question. What piece of legislation had already pulled that money out of the Edge Fund?
I couldn't tell you what specific legislation.
Okay, you just said that the money was already gone from there. I'd like to know what piece of legislation pulled the money out of the Edge Fund.
Well, I don't know the specific bill number, but let's say that no legislation pulled it out and it was still sitting in the savings account.
Right.
That's fine. So what? There's $161 million sitting there for another year. But let me tell you.
Well, no, that every year that they dole it out to investing in companies.
No, they only can dole out
the earnings.
The earnings.
Yeah.
So they could have doled out $7 million, and the rest of the principal will still be sitting there. I'm going to read you, if I might, some text messages that I received that morning regarding the Edge Fund. Take me a moment to find it.
One moment, please.
Very revealing. Myself and some others decided we want to use that Edge money entirely differently than what the alleged so-called leadership of the House, Senate, and the governor want to use it for. We came up with a proposal. The proposal was we were going to give, don't guess, $50 million to higher education. Why is that? To get the Democrats for our proposal. We were going to give $20 million to the Department of Corrections. We were going to use, I think, $70 million in capital repairs and another $20 million for I can't recall the specific issue.
But no legislation to do that?
Oh, so, I have text the governor's office. Denise Northrup, the governor's chief of staff, who I haven't visited with in a year and a half. This is Mike Reynolds. We would like to have a meeting in the next few minutes, if possible. We have a proposal. That was at 2:42. 2:50. I'm in a meeting right now. We'll be in touch. Now, she knew this was about the Edge Fund. Didn't say that in my text. I walked out to the rotunda. I observed Denise Northrup's meeting. She was standing out there talking to a lobbyist. 3:27. Denise, I saw your meeting out in the rotunda. You don't need to return my text now or ever. Representative Reynolds, I was over on the Senate side working with Nelson, Burridge, and Treat on DHS bills. Blah, blah, blah. That's the respect we got from the governor's office. We could have put any proposal up, and as a matter of fact, I had put proposals for that on 9 different bills during the day. It's a matter of record. Every bill that came out of the joint House-Senate committee, I had put resolutions on directing the use of that fund. The first 2 bills were defeated, and they gave up trying to run the other 7. So there was options.
All right, I'm going to tell you why it's a conservative vote. And I don't disagree. I would have loved to take the money out of there and use it to repair the Capitol, use it to fund the ME's office, use it for the proper functions the government should have been used for. But that never was, ever on the plate.
Yes, it was.
That was not on the bill. That never was on the floor.
Yes, it was.
There was one bill that was on the floor, and as Representative Wesselhoff said, 30 minutes before the session was over. That was what was going to be considered. I want to tell you why it was conservative. If I were to pull this down right here, and you see, you used to, the Star Wars movie, if you ever saw the Star Wars trilogy, there was this entity in there called Jabba the Hutt. And Jabba the Hutt was this big, fat, slobbery thing that consumed everything it could get its hands on. And one of the last ones, Jabba had a bunch of relatives. And those relatives were more Hutts. And they were doing the same thing. They were consuming everything. So you got 2 funds out here. You have what's called the Edge Fund out here. It's sitting here. The Chamber supports it. The Oklahoma supports it. It's supported by a lot of very powerful entities. You have another one out here, the Endowed Shares. I'm against both of those entities. Absolutely against both of them. 30 minutes before, as Representative Wesselhoff says, 30 minutes, there's actually a bill on the floor ready to be voted on, and what it's going to do is kill one of these. It's gone. See, as long as these 2 entities exist, any state of Oklahoma gets some new revenues. Anytime it grows, we get some new growth money. Guess what they're going to be doing? We want it. We want to consume it. We want to eat it. And by killing the Edge Fund, even though I don't like how the money was spent, this Jabba the Hutt son, twin, is gone. This one over here is over 50% satisfied. There's less than $150 million now that has to go into this other one. I'll take any day that I can kill one of these Hutt twins and reduce the size of the other one, and that way future new growth money will not be as acceptable. Had you not passed this bill to do this, I'm going to tell you what you could have done next year. Nothing. You want to know why you couldn't have done anything next year? Because the Edge Fund and its supporters who got taken off guard at the end of the session, they would have been out with their lobbyists, the Oklahoman would have been out, every special interest group that supports that would have been out there, and you wouldn't have had the political power to touch it next year. That's why it was a good vote. Sally, your turn.
I have a question for you, Charlie.
Okay.
Well, I don't think a yes vote was a good vote, and here's why. The bottom line is we are upset with the way the state spends their money. We waste too much money, okay?
Great.
We've all heard this phrase before. Sometimes you have to retreat in order to come back. and really win the battle, okay? I disagree with Charlie in this regard that next year, something he's leaving out of what he just said. Next year, there's going to be more good conservatives in the House. More good conservatives. We will have more firepower to get rid of the edge. What we have done with the yes vote on this bill is we have forever blown $168 million that could have been used right here and now to take care of the Capitol, the medical examiner's office, the Department of Corrections. We have forever blown that money, and I think we have the firepower. We could have come back next year and gotten rid of the edge, because we're going to have some folks who are going to be more like the Mike Reynolds and Paul Wesselhoff and myself, who are going to stand up regardless. We're going to make the right vote regardless. You look at, if you could see the individuals, I forget what the exact vote is, but as you can see...
I'm going to bring that up. How many more are you going to have, Sally?
I don't know for sure how many more,
10?
but
10 more?
Regardless, you look at the people who voted no for this bill, and you're going to look at every true conservative, almost every one of them, that's in the House.
Yeah, okay, hang on just a second. If it would be 10 more, you'd have got 36 no votes on it. And so that's a little difference. Paul?
Charlie, can I just ask you
a
simple question?
Yeah.
We Republican caucus put our heads together and said we want to spend this money on capital repairs for government for next year instead of doing bonds, because we don't know what the economy is going to look like next year. So we put our heads together and said, we don't want to hear this vote. We told the Speaker, we do not want to hear the vote. That's what a whip vote does, Charlie.
Yeah.
So he brings it out 30 minutes because he knows he has Democrats to pass it. What do you do with that, Charlie?
I don't disagree that he betrayed you, and
he betrayed the whole caucus.
I understand that, but you had an opportunity to kill one of Jabba the Hutt's kids.
All right. Okay, and
feed the other one half its appetite.
I have a question, if somebody could help me out on this, requirement that the legislature fund the state regents endowment trust fund. Why did the legislature feel like they needed to do that? Can somebody help me out on that?
Well, that happened before Paul and I got there, But a big thing that they did was, not last year, maybe the year before, is we said we're going to cut off the endowed shares, but we gave them 6 months to do that, and during that time is when the Boone Pickens and all these other very wealthy people flooded in all this money, and therefore that obligated the state, that made it even a higher amount that the state had to match. So a mistake was done, and most of us true conservatives voted a couple of years ago to say, no, let's cut that endowed funds off right now. They extended it another 6 months or so.
You can't obligate future legislatures to fund something, though. I don't think.
No, but I'm
Senator Stein.
Wait a minute, Charlie.
Okay.
I'm still in the middle. I was gathering information before. Now, someone told me that there was a court decision. That's what I'm asking. Was there a court decision?
I haven't reviewed it in a couple years, but my understanding is there's a court decision or Attorney General's opinion that says we owe the money based on legislation. However, there's not a timetable on paying it. That we owe it there's not a dead set date that it has to be paid by. But I went through it with the AG's office before, and it is either their opinion or the court decision. I'm pretty sure it was a court decision that said, yes, you owe the money, but there's no timetable on paying it. Okay. And that's one of the things that mattered to me was that, in the story Davy Crockett, Not Yours to Give, he asked on the vote, has it been audited, has it been ascertained? It has been, we do owe it, and as Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. We killed it with this.
Okay, now, that's the information I need to get for it. Remember when I said that one of the things that the criteria is constitutional principles. The couple things. One is one legislature cannot bind a future legislature on an appropriation. They can change that. And a court certainly can't not do it. A court cannot bind the legislature to spend a certain amount of money That is separation of powers, and that is an important constitutional question.
John?
Yeah.
I just want to say that I think we're losing sight of the purpose that brings us here today. OCPAC is really special in that we have the legislators in this room who are involved in these votes, and they can tell us beyond what's just on the bill itself, what's happening here. Because I feel like with this bill, you see what's on the paper, and we all want to judge it philosophically. We go, oh, it's clear, kill the beast, kill the beast, and we're all yelling as we charge out to the castle. But these legislators are here telling us, wait a minute, there's something going on that you guys don't understand behind this piece of paper. And so it tells me that, look, we got 22 bills here. We only need 10. This one clearly was being used as a political tool by the Democrats and the crooked leadership. We need to take that into account when we decide how to hold these good people accountable. Because they're telling us what was going on behind the scenes. We take that into consideration. Let's kick the bill out. Because on the face of it, yeah, it's clear. But it may not be that clear. Let's listen to their counsel and maybe not choose this one. That's what I'm saying. That's why we're here today.
As a conservative, I would have voted to kill the edge fund. There's no doubt about that. Now, as a former legislator, I can tell you, I feel what Sally said and what Paul, because the shenanigans that goes on is just beyond bizarre oftentimes. And it's sometimes you just want to lash out and kill the messenger. But I've got to tell you, Anthony and I fought the Edge Fund for many years while we were up there. If I had a yay or nay vote on kill the Edge Fund, I would run a sword right through its heart, immediately. I wouldn't even hesitate, and I would swallow that bitter pill that the $167 million was wasted, along with the other $300 million that came in this year for the politicians to spend on all the other junk that they decided to spend it on, rather than limiting government. This is absolutely a conservative vote, is yes, in my opinion, because it is a limited state government issue. Getting rid of the Edge Fund is limiting government, and we don't have to deal with that from now on. So I think killing the Edge Fund is a good conservative vote. It should be on the index.
Representative Bowman.
Sir, I said between two people who voted no and I voted yes. Okay, and they're my friends. We're conservatives as you're going to find. But we were. But in my case was this. I had to vote what was put in front of me.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? I would have loved to be able to do what we could have done, but that didn't get done.
That's right.
I would love to get to do what we wanted to later, but that's not going to get done. What I had to do was vote on what was put in front of me based on the facts that I have right here. Getting rid of that Edge Fund was the reason I voted yes.
I have a question. Why then did all of the conservatives except one?
Except two.
Except two. Three.
I wouldn't.
3, 4.
We can look at this. But the strong conservatives all voted against this. Now, are we all stupid?
No. All the strong conservatives did not vote against.
Oh, there's 51.
Let me say something. Okay, can you make it real quick?
Yes. If he voted no and you would vote yes, this should not be on the list.
Okay. All right, everybody. I'm going to say one final thing and we're done with this, okay? I'm going to tell you something. Al Gerhardt, I haven't seen it, but I got a call. Al Gerhardt put out an email and he said Charlie Meadows will stand in the middle of the street naked before he lets Jason Murphy fail to get 100 on That's horrible a word picture as that is. Charlie's keeping his clothes on, okay? Jason Murphy and Randy Terrell, who I think you would consider to be conservatives, also voted yes on this.
And Randy told me why he voted.
Yeah, I know. They did it for different reasons.
He's running for county commissioner.
They did it for different reasons.
Norman, Oklahoma.
I know it. They did it for different reasons. It doesn't matter. I can tell you why Jason Murphy voted for it. Jason Murphy, the most conservative lawmaker in the state of Oklahoma, voted for it, and the reason he did is he could kill one of Jabba the Hutt's kids. And that's it, he could kill the Edge Fund. Now, let me just say this. I now know which lawmaker has been feeding, based on this whole issue and what was said. I now know the lawmaker of the 4 I suspected were feeding, have been feeding, what's his name? Al Gerhardt. I know who's feeding him information. He just left the meeting, by the way. But anyway, Charlie's keeping his clothes on. I'm going to suggest that we need to consider this a conservative vote, a yes, conservative. But come Saturday, I'm going to urge us not to use this bill. But I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you think a yes vote is conservative on this? Can I see a show of hands there? Okay, how many of you think a no vote is conservative on this?
Amen.
Okay, yeses have it by 1.
How many think we should scrap this bill from the list?
Don't call it division.
Okay.
That's next Saturday's deal. That's Saturday's deal.
Okay, I'm glad we got that one covered. Okay. Are there any, short of me just start through, from the first one, are there any other ones that anybody would like to discuss? Okay, Bob?
I think Charlie brought up a valid issue before, it'd be good to clarify. Charlie, would you stand in the middle of the road?
No! No, I don't care if he gets 100 or not. If he votes wrong and it's on the index, that's his problem.
That's not conservative.
Okay, I'm going to just kind of skim through these and see if anything pops up. There are 2 bills dealing with sunsetting agencies. One was OETA would have gone out of existence, had the legislature not voted to continue it. They wanted to continue it for another 4 years, and they had to settle for only 2 years. Also, the Music Hall of Fame. There was no money going into state money going to the Music Hall of Fame, but it is a state entity. And now there's also a private board in addition to the state-run board, and they got an extension for I believe 3 years. Anybody see any problem with either of those? And of course, the conservative vote is to let those sunset, not to continue on the state agencies. Yes. Representative Vaughn.
Sir, number 1, I knew when I pushed that button, Charlie was going to come talk to me.
Did he?
It was horrible. I was going, God, I'm going to get dinged on this one, okay? But I live in an area, okay, that there's not a lot of cables, okay? And OETA is something that if an emergency came up and it was tornadoes were coming and get in your house or get under your shed or whatever you got to do, OETA could blast it out and they could sit their little antenna, because I used to sit there all the goddamn this way or that way. I voted to be able to give them the money so they could at least come up with some more money later on, only because I live in an area that may not have television. That was it.
And I respect his vote, even though I voted against it. It makes good sense for him to vote against it.
So for my area, I had to vote away. Hello, Charlie.
Do they not get,
I don't sit no more.
do they not get, Steve, do they not get any of the Oklahoma City stations in Ponca City?
Yes, they do. On cable in town, yes. You might not be in a country area, no.
Okay.
Well, with antenna, can't you get it?
Okay, sorry.
Can't you get it in Ponca City, with antenna or not?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it's not the only alternative. I mean, there are other alternatives. Bob?
Do they have sirens in Ponca City?
But they took electricity off.
It doesn't matter. This is still a government program for a specific niche goal.
Who does?
So it's, maybe you do need to vote that way.
In that district.
I won't finish that sentence.
No.
But let's face it.
I was getting deep, and I knew it. But it just
And Representative Dank always complains about, when we discuss this, he said he has a lot of elderly people in his district and they wouldn't get Lawrence well. Okay, we have a couple of Second Amendment issues. One is the open carry law, which I think everyone's familiar with. And then also liability at gun ranges. Both of these bills passed overwhelmingly.
Yes, I think you're
give the Second Amendment issue short shrift with these two bills. I think there were more critical votes on a more wider spread open carry that are more critical than these two. So,
well, now this was the bill that finally passed. You're saying there were
is that
some.
a requirement they have to pass to be a critical vote?
Well, we like to have. There are, just like now, there were votes on a whole bunch of different tax cuts proposals, and nothing in the same form ended up passing both houses, and so you could pick a vote here and there. We like for the final vote, because like even on open carry, there were some earlier votes, and then the bill was modified and watered down some. But still, there were those that were against it, and so those few dedicated liberals who were just against any kind of loosening of gun laws, it singles those out. And we need bills of both types. Ones that there's just a handful of liberals that you can really tell who the dedicated liberals are, and some that where we only have a handful of conservatives. Because we want just a few that are getting in the 90s or 100%, and we want a few that are getting like 10% or less.
But I think we need to find the rhinos too, and that's part of this index.
Well, and there are bills for that. And there were some other gun bills that we looked at. One had to do with after the Katrina hurricane, where the local government confiscated guns. There were some bills, so that couldn't happen here. Nobody opposed it. And if it passes 48-0, that doesn't do us any good to put it on. So it kind of came down to these two. Okay.
I was going to ask about, there's nothing, I'm not, maybe I missed it, I was waiting, I apologize. Education bills, Senate Bill 1797 by Clark Jolly is a monstrous takeover of government, and I would like to see something like
Well,
that.
let me say, nothing can be put on the list that isn't here already. And if it's not here, that's the failure of lawmakers to submit that bill for consideration. Or it's a failure on our part to submit it. Lawmakers aren't the only ones. Anybody can submit a bill. It's our failure, but today is past the deadline for putting bills on here.
And a lot of them, we did research, just as I mentioned about the Katrina thing, and then we looked at the vote and saw that we don't have like 48 conservatives in the Senate. There's got to be a few and I think that one was the same in the House. That there were no votes against it. I don't know if that was. There were about 50 different bills that we looked at, and for various reasons. We got it down to this 22, and probably will be maybe 20 by Saturday after we consider a couple of these that we've had a discussion on.
It was the last vote of the day.
So I don't have an explanation for that particular one. Okay, we had a good number of pro-life bills, and the vote was very similar on all of them. And I think they were probably all good bills. Now one that there was some controversy about was the Oklahoma Personhood Act, and that passed in the Senate, but then it got to the House and the vote was not held. But there was another vote on a similar thing after that, and I guess it was Representative Vaughn that authored the resolution on that. I don't know if you want to say anything, a little explanation about your resolution?
Sure. It got to the point where the bill that we passed last year, which was my bill, went on to the Senate. I won't go through all what happened to that, but a lot of us know that. It got to the point where Kane's bill and all that stuff filtered back down to what we originally voted for in the House in the first place. And so it came back to us in the House, and we got together and said, you know what? Let's just do a resolution and say, this is what we voted for, period, last year. This is where we still stand. It doesn't do a whole lot of the stuff that they say that they want to do. You know what? It just makes a statement. In the state of Oklahoma, we believe that life starts at conception. Do what you want with everything else, but this is what we believe. And that's what that resolution was for.
Representative Westphal.
Just a comment on the personhood bill. As a whip, I can tell you it lost by 2 votes. We whipped it twice. So again, the Republican caucus tells the Republican speaker, we don't want to hear the bill. I wanted to hear it. But he honored the whip count, unlike that stupid edge bill.
I would like to say that I don't think that we should include number 8, and the only reason why is because HR 1054 is a non-binding resolution. So I think that you can get a lot of people that would vote for the resolution that would not vote for the binding. Knowing that it would do nothing, that is a simple statement, I don't think that that would give a clear reflection of the sentiment of the House, because it's easy to vote for something that does nothing.
But there were still those hardcore liberals, pro-abortion people that voted against it.
I think we'd have a better pro-life bill out there.
And we do have others to consider.
That would reflect the.
So for Saturday, that's kind of debate. Is this one as good, or are some of those others the better one to select?
So I would just encourage looking at other pro-life bills, because I think having a simple resolution in the House is not strong enough.
I do have those 3 others to consider.
If you were going to use this one, you'd use the Senate vote and the vote to adjourn in the House. That's the one that actually, the vote to adjourn is actually the vote about this issue. And it's sad that that's not here.
But sometimes, I mean, if you were there, maybe it was clear that that's what...
It was clear to everybody what that adjournment vote meant.
Okay. Any other comments on the pro-life bills?
You missed the best pro-life bill, I think.
Which one is that?
What was it called?
2569, I think it is. Where in the past you could not hold the abortionist accountable for wrongful death. My bill made it possible that if they violate any of the 5 regulations on abortion.
But if I remember right, there were no votes against it in the Senate.
And that's why you didn't choose it. And I respect that. But that was the strongest pro-life vote of the year.
It looked good. And then I looked at the Senate vote, and I thought, we don't, there's no way that there are any, that everybody in the Senate is conservative or pro-life. Okay. Now we have bonds were a big thing there at the end of the session. There was a $200 million proposal for the state capitol complex. The biggest part of it go to repairs of the Capitol, but also the governor's mansion, the Jim Thorpe building, and then maybe other buildings if they could spread the money that far. And it was going to cost about $10 to $11 million in debt service per year for 30 years, I guess. And so that was definitely a good one to look at for the House, but it failed in the House, and so there wasn't a vote in the Senate, but there were 2 significant bond bills in the Senate. One of them was the American Indian and Cultural Center that we've already put $66 million into of state money, and they wanted another $40 million of state money. When the last time they said that was the $25 million we gave was going to be the last, and now they're back for another 40, and that's not to mention the operational costs of the center.
Yeah, so, $1.5 a year, 20 years, $30 million in operational costs. Yep.
So that's a good one to consider as a match to the Capitol building repair bond issue. The other consideration would be a whole new thing, the Oklahoma Museum of Popular Culture, a $42.5 million facility that they want to build in Tulsa. They originally were wanting $40 million in bonds for that, and they saw they didn't have votes, so they cut it back to $20 million. Of course, they'd be back for that other $20 million, a couple of years from now. So that's another one. I don't even know what the Museum of Popular Culture is, but So what we're going to ask on Saturday is that you tell us should we if it makes in the top 10, choice is going to be for the House the Capitol bond issue, and then either match it with the Indian Culture Center bond vote or the Museum of Popular Culture vote. So any comments on any of those?
I'd just like to add one comment. Myself and your favorite legislator, Jason Murphy, did 4 days of research on bonds in Oklahoma. We come up with a figure somewhere between $11 and $13 billion the state is indebted to bonds. Some of those bonds will be paid off when I'm 99 years old. I am 64 right now.
So we don't want to go into more indebtedness. We had the money to pay for it. We also had another $167 million we could have used next year, but no, we blew it and gave it to higher rate.
But with Paul, you don't do bonds, and these bond sales people don't make money.
One more thing on that. It's hard to get those Tulsa lawmakers to vote for projects in Oklahoma City if you don't throw some money back to Tulsa, and that's what this is all about. Throwing money back to Tulsa to get support for bonded indebtedness in Oklahoma City.
Never bothered me.
If you had more lawmakers, it'd be the same way in Punk City. Just one of you, Steve.
Okay, if we go to the third page, number 11, a new Lake Murray Lodge. The state voted to give, now they didn't have to actually appropriate money for this. There's a state park fund that the oil and gas revenues go into, and just like these endowment things, you only spend the earnings from it, and so that's supposed to be used for improvements at the state parks. But they decided to use principal out of it and spend $15 million to build a new lodge at Lake Murray. The existing one was built in the 50s, and it has some major structural problems, and even if it didn't have structural problems, it's not up to the current requirements of a resort hotel. Of course, the fundamental question is, should the state be building hotels and operating them? Any comments on that one?
I'm sorry I have too many comments. This bill won't be included, just like the Edge bill. I'll predict that. But let me tell you, who's going to benefit from this bill? Ardmore. So why doesn't the city of Ardmore step up and repair the lodge? Because that's where all the tourism are coming. They're going to spend money in the restaurants and gasoline stations in Ardmore. So let Ardmore fix the lodge.
Well, actually, they attempted to. For about 2 or 3 years, they had an agreement with the state to try to build a new lodge, and then at about the same time the economic problems happened, and they weren't able to get the hotel developer in there that they thought they were going to get. So then it came back, the state tourism department to try to figure out what to do. So.
What else would the money be used for, Ron?
Well, the state park fund, oil and gas revenues from the parks, and most of the money is generated by Lake Murray.
Yeah.
And so every year, some projects at parks statewide would be funded out of the earnings from that fund.
Well, but is the lodge a part of that fund too? I mean, is that considered a part?
Yeah.
So they really haven't misused this money.
Except that they tapped into the principal.
Yeah.
And actually, I know a little bit that last year they tried to take that principal money and spend it on the American Indian Cultural Center. And so some were worried that it was going to be taken away from the park, so they decided, well, let's go ahead and get it spent so they can't take it away. But, okay, next one, Senate Joint Resolution 52, prohibition on intangible property tax. Apparently there was a court ruling that made intangible property, which I guess would be things like trademarks, things that do not have not a physical property that you pay property taxes on, but a intellectual type property. And apparently there was a court ruling that says that those things should be taxed, and so this would make it not be taxed. It actually puts it to a vote of the people coming in November.
That's a very anti-business tax.
So anybody have any problems with that? Okay. Next one is Oklahoma Employee Injury Benefit Act. And basically this provides an alternative to the Workman's Comp Fund, which Oklahoma's Workman's Comp, state-run Workman's Comp Fund is judged to be one of the worst and inefficient in the country. This would give an alternative similar to like they have in Texas, where they basically can be self-funded instead of paying money into the state Workman's Comp Fund. Any comments on that? Okay, we covered corporation commission fees. Next one, the state agency consolidation and reorganization. And this consolidates the Oklahoma State and Education Employees Group Insurance Board with the Employee Benefits Council, which covers state and, well, both of them are kind of dealing with state employees and education employees. And then they roll all that into the replacement for the Office of State Finance, which will be called the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. Along with that, there were some changes made in state employee benefits, kind of the same things that talk about, or what happened in Wisconsin, which is, those that opposed the bill, that's probably their motivation, that they were concerned about some reductions in state employee benefits. Anybody have any comments or anything to add to that? Okay. Next one, December municipal elections. Now, I think Senator Sykes can tell us a little bit about that.
I just say this is one of the things that we repealed, and now they came back and put it back in, and it's basically so Oklahoma City and Tulsa can run their special elections in December with low voter turnout and raise taxes. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
I think it would. Quite frankly, I think it's a good challenge for a special law because it only applies to cities of 250,000 or greater. So it's just something where they can come back in, and the rationale offered for it was that Oklahoma City prefers to issue their bonds on elections based in December.
There's a lot of times, there's ice storms or something that keeps attendance down, or cold weather. Christmas, holiday season, people aren't paying attention. So.
Senator Sykes is exactly correct that it's a special or local law. In the 1930s, the Supreme Court ruled that you could not bypass a special or local law provision by using population formulas. And Senator Brogdon caught a lot of heat for using that exact ruling to vote against wine and beer in grocery stores. And I did a lot of research on the subject. Using population formulas is a dangerous, slippery slope to go down.
One further thing, 3 taxpayer-funded lobbyists worked on this bill. 3 of them.
It's definitely worth it too. Okay, the next one is public-private partnerships. Senate Bill 1828 would expand the mission of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce to include partnerships with private companies to accomplish a strategic statewide plan. And that includes things like inland seaports, which you may be familiar with. That's about all the information that we have on it. So I don't know if anybody wants to make any further comments or sees any problems with that bill.
It's a wonderful, wonderful bill.
Yes.
I have no problems with this bill. I'm just looking over the list once again, and all of these bills, I see nothing on education. Maybe you need to look back at some of the education bills that passed and so forth. For example, I'm seeing HB 2970 extends the moratorium on national board certification. That might be a good one to discern whether someone is conservative or liberal. I don't know. I'm just a suggestion from the floor that perhaps an education bill.
Well, nothing really stood out as and I don't remember that anybody proposed any. I don't recall any education ones as standing out there as would be suggested to use. Now we had one legislator, good conservative legislator. He gave his list. It was just a list of bill numbers, and we didn't have time to go look up what that bill did. Most of the others, the ones present here, gave us a list with a little bit of information, attached to each bill, telling us, here's what the bill was about, here's why it's a conservative versus liberal vote, here's when it was voted on, and so on. So, perhaps, like on that list where it was just bill numbers, and we really didn't have time to start, researching what those bills were, maybe some of those education bills were in there.
Yeah.
A clarification, what bill did you say was a wonderful bill? Which one were you talking about?
Well, I think the public-private partnership is a great bill.
I mean, it's saying it has all those code words that.
A great bill to use?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it is clearly a conservative and liberal perspective because what it speaks of is economic development. In other words, either fascist or socialist capitalism is what it speaks of.
Well, since it says that the no vote is a conservative vote, and you said that.
You're against the bill.
But
That would have
you said
expanded
it's a
it.
bill, so. I was.
The no vote is the correct vote.
Thank you.
He's just saying it's a good vote.
It's a good one.
Yes, yes, thank you.
I would encourage, for next year, if you see a vote in the legislature that you think would be a good vote for our index, get that information to us, you know. And
Anybody can submit it.
you don't have to be a member of the Oklahoma legislature to submit it. And in fact, we don't differentiate between bills that come from private individuals and legislators.
Anthony?
I just have a couple of comments. I don't remember this bill doing what it says here, but the only no votes in the Senate were Judisa McIntyre, Constance Johnson, Al McCaffrey, and a couple of Charles Wyrick, and one other that is nowhere near a conservative. It did not reach the governor's desk, but I don't remember that this is what it did. Nobody's perfect. Maybe we all missed it. I don't know. But
which one?
You didn't vote the right way.
So, well, I usually don't vote with Al McCaffrey. If that's what you're asking.
Anything else?
Do you have another question?
Or Judisa McIntyre.
Or Judisa McIntyre for that regard. But those are the people that voted no. Maybe we missed it. I mean, there was a time I was the only no vote in the entire legislature that opened up the door for the smart port, and we had to. Unfortunately, we caught that in time, and this one did not become law. But I just don't. I mean, anybody can miss something, and maybe we did. I don't know, but that's not what I remember it doing.
But again, those kind of code words, public-private partnerships, in state.
That's why we read the bills rather than just look at code
yeah.
words. Yeah.
And we have limited information there, so we'll take another look there. And because if those were the only ones that voted against it,
otherwise Charlie's saying Al McCaffrey's a conservative.
And the next one is also another one we didn't have a lot of information on, the State Infrastructure Bank. But this was promoted by Representative Morissette, and who's the big one behind the rail, subsidizing rail between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. He has a depot in his district here in Oklahoma City. And so the several legislators that proposed this, they all mentioned about this expands so that the State Infrastructure Bank, which I'm a little confused if the State Infrastructure Bank already exists and was expanding what they could do.
Yeah. Ron,
it does.
I contacted Amanda Teagarden, and she researched this. The revenue streams were already in the bill. The only thing this bill did was add rail to it. That's what Amanda said.
That's not true.
That's not true. That's not true.
Seth, okay, you guys.
It add new revenue streams to it. Yes.
Did it add additional?
It added a new revenue stream. I can't remember the exact. It's an act from 1998 where basically they can borrow money. ODOT can borrow money from the federal government without getting the legislature's consent. And the type of projects these will be used for are for basically NASCO, interstate transportation corridors, smart ports, everything else that we've been successful in defeating.
I thought Amanda told me those revenue streams.
I'll get you a copy of the bill and let you read it. You can make up your own mind. Okay. But rail, it definitely adds rail.
I actually have already read the bill.
Yeah, which is bad enough. But it adds this act from 1998. I sent it in with, and now they can, the State Infrastructure Bank through ODOT can borrow from that too.
Okay.
So I've done a little research on the program that it allows the State Infrastructure Bank to participate in, and it allows the state to apply for loans on behalf of private corporations to the federal government, and so they can operate, for example, that's designed for large-scale transportation projects that cross state boundaries or have a large interstate impact, and so exactly like the senator was saying, NAPSCO, NAPA Superhighway, but it would allow for the state to apply for the loan and then a private corporation operate it. The Trans-Texas Corridor was supposed to be built with these types of loans from this exact program.
Okay.
Okay. And just one other note, this was the last bill voted on in the Senate before Sonny died. The pro tem had already taken up the gavel and everybody was ready to get out of there. It was the last bill voted on.
Kind of like the Edge bill.
Yeah, and brought to the floor by Brian Crane, last year's Rhino winner in the Senate.
Okay, we got two more here, 19 and 20. They're kind of similar in a way. One of them has to do with stopping unemployment benefit fraud, and this would take the form of people who are on unemployment, they get a job, but they continue to draw unemployment even though they're employed. And then also people that don't go out and look for work while they're on unemployment. And basically it says aside from paying back the money that they should not have received, there would be a 25% penalty. There was also another provision of the bill having to do if somebody failed a drug test, that the employer could get the drug test information without getting approval without having to get permission from a terminated employee in order to use a positive drug test as evidence in dispute on unemployment benefits. The other bill, which most people probably heard about, where they're going to do drug tests of welfare recipients, that was modified a lot. It finally came down to if there was a suspicion, then they could do drug testing. And one of the changes was that the beneficiary of the recipient would not have to pay for the test. That was a concern of some, that where they were going to have to pay for a test in order to get the benefits. So, but apparently the idea behind this, and it's been done in other states, is actually cut down on the number of recipients because they're taking the money, going out there and buying drugs, and so to get them out of that. So, any comments on those two?
Well, I really think that there should be automatic drug testing to the recipients across the board. I manage quite a few apartments in a couple of buildings, and I'll tell you what. Out of our Section 8, I'm not going to say, you can't say all this, some really good, deserving people on it. But I'd say 80% get their checks, go load up with their drugs, and they got a stream of running in and out, and we are paying for it, the tax.
And apparently that's, that a lot of people have complained about that, and that was the reason for the bill. So.
Kim.
Is this on just new applicants, or can they go back and
apparently it's with new or existing. If they suspicion that then have reason to suspicion that they may be using drugs, then they can call for them to be tested.
And how do they determine who the alternate payee is going to be?
Yeah, I don't know the exact procedure, and that was another one of the compromises that was made. That what about the poor kids? Even though the parents are getting the 10 of the 18 families spend on drugs, well, what about those poor children? So the idea was to have an alternate person that's not using it on drugs to get the money to make sure those children are taken care of. Okay, and does anybody have any? I think we covered all of them. Anybody have any comments about any of them yet?
My only problem with this last one on the drug testing is it didn't also include a requirement to create a gambler card system in the state of Oklahoma. Meaning that if you were going to buy a lotto ticket or go to any of the racinos anywhere, you would have to have a gambler's card. And so when you had a gambler's card, you'd go and you'd swipe it in, and now the state knows who's gambling. And that's fine, I don't care, other than the fact you wouldn't be eligible for any type of state funds if you are a gambler. That's the only failing of this. It isn't far enough. It's just an idea for some of you lawmakers next year. Because why should we be giving welfare payments to people that go out and gamble?
It could be their ticket out of poverty.
Could be.
Bob?
I can argue that the other way, Charlie. I don't think the government should be in the business of gambling or welfare. And we're still gathering information on our own citizens and giving it to the thugs down there. Not all you guys are thugs. But down there at the pork pen, right?
Well, I wish we could outlaw gambling, but it's not outlawed, and so now it has to be regulated.
Does it?
Sure.
If it's legal.
For the welfare people.
Yeah.
Sure.
If we're paying for the ticket, my taxes are going to pay for them going
To gamble.
Sit down
You
together.
bet.
Well, yeah, but you see, two wrongs don't make it right. That's my argument. Remember that whole idea?
You need to bring in some job
The
and
government shouldn't be engaged.
for Bob.
Right? So that's the whole thing. That's where going further down that rabbit hole doesn't make things better. All right?
Okay, if nobody has anything else, we encourage you to be back here on Saturday when we, those of you who are members, to do the actual voting and select the 10 bills. Thank you.